Ancient Egypt. For more than 3,000 years, the Egyptians, ruled by kings called pharaohs, established a remarkable civilization along the banks of the Nile River, Egypt's main highway. People and goods traveled along it, and it supplied fresh water for humans and animals and irrigated the crops. Surplus food, linen, and papyrus were traded throughout the region in return for silver, copper, tin, timber, horses, and human slaves, making Egypt a wealthy and powerful nation. The Egyptians were one of the first people to invent a system of picture writing, known as hieroglyphs. They were also skilled builders, constructing magnificent stone palaces, temples, and pyramid-shaped tombs, many of which still survive today. Mediterranean Sea. Sea trade. Ships traded along the Mediterranean coast to Libya in the west and to Phoenicia in the north. Levant, Joppa, Gaza, Buto, Avaris, Nile Delta, Lower Egypt. The Pyramids of Giza. The Pyramids of Giza were built for the pharaohs Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure, as well as their queens. Funeral boat. A pharaoh's funeral was an elaborate affair. A funeral boat carried by attendants took the pharaoh to his final resting place. Memphis, Saqqara, reeds used to make papyrus, Sinai, Serabit, Heracleopolis. People completing temple statues. Ben Hassan, the Sphinx, the half-human, half-lion Sphinx guards the pyramids in Giza. Baharia Oasis. Farafra Oasis. Harvesting grain. Abydos. Farmers plowing fields. Eastern Desert. Dendera. Red Sea. Valley of the Kings. Thebes. Hatshepsut's Temple. Queen Hatshepsut ruled Egypt in place of her young stepson. A massive temple was built in her honor close to the Valley of the Kings. El Dakhla Oasis, Western Desert. Abu Simbel. Ramesses II built a magnificent temple at Abu Simbel. First Cataract. Edfu. Trading ships sailing toward Punt. Temple of Karnak. The Temple of Karnak at Thebes was dedicated to Amun, the king of the gods, and was the most important temple in ancient Egypt. Fishing boat on the Nile. Anaba, Abu Simbel. Second Cataract. Kumna, mud brick houses. All ordinary houses in Egypt were built with bricks that were made from mud and straw. Roofs were flat so that people could sleep on them in hot weather. Dal Cataract. Salima Oasis, the Nile River. Every summer, high rainfall in the mountains of eastern Africa filled the Nile River to its bursting point. Rainwater flowed down into the river valley and flooded Egypt's fields with muddy water that was rich in nutrients. Farmers learned to dig out canals and reservoirs in order to store some of this water. When the floods receded in the fall, they planted their crops: wheat to make bread, barley to ferment into beer, grapes for wine, papyrus reeds for writing on, and flax for cloth. They irrigated the crops during the dry season with the stored floodwaters. Third Cataract, Kerma. The cataracts, a series of rocky waterfalls and rapids, blocked access up the Nile River. Storing grain in clay jars. Nubia, Napata, Fourth Cataract. Nile, Fifth Cataract. Nubian Desert, riches from Nubia. Egyptians bought luxury goods such as ebony, gold, and ivory from neighboring Nubia. 3500 BC to 0. 3500 BC. 3500. Farming flourishes in the Nile Valley. 3300. First Egyptian towns are built. 3300 to 3000. Hieroglyphic scripture is developed. 3000 BC. 3000. Upper and Lower Egypt are united with the capital at Memphis. 2920. First dynasty of kings begins to rule. 2630. First step pyramid is built at Saqqara. 2575. Senofru founds the fourth dynasty and establishes a powerful old kingdom based at Memphis. 2550. Khufu builds the Great Pyramid in Giza. 2500 BC. 2134, Old Kingdom ends as Egypt divides into two rival kingdoms. 2040, Egypt is reunified under the 11th dynasty, establishing the Middle Kingdom. 2000 BC. 1640 to 1550, the Hyksos people from the Levant conquer and rule Lower Egypt. 1550, Amos founds the 18th dynasty and establishes the new kingdom. 1500 BC. 1473 to 1458, Hatshepsut is queen and sends a naval expedition to Punt in East Africa. 1353 to 1335, Akhenaten creates a short-lived monotheistic or one-god religion based on Aten, the sun god. 1333 to 1323, reign of Tutankhamun, the boy pharaoh. 1290 to 1224, Ramesses II extends the Egyptian empire into the Levant. 1070, fall of the 21st dynasty marks the end of effective Egyptian power. 1000 BC. 671 to 651, the Assyrians occupy Egypt. 525 to 523, the Persians briefly conquer Egypt. 500 BC. 323, Alexander the Great conquers Egypt, establishing a new Ptolemaic dynasty. 30, death of Cleopatra, last Egyptian pharaoh. Egypt becomes part of the Roman Empire. 0. Ancient Africa. Around 5,500 years ago, the grassy plains of the Sahara began to dry out and turn into a desert, dividing Africa in half. Until the introduction of camels from Arabia around 100 BC, there was very little communication across the sandy desert. Many great civilizations flourished south of the Sahara. The oldest of these was in Nubia, close to the top of the Nile River. At one time, the Nubian kingdom was so powerful that it ruled all of Egypt, but its successor, Meroe, was eventually conquered by the Christian kingdom of Aksum, the forerunner of modern-day Ethiopia. In the west, the people of Nok learned to work with iron and produced beautiful terracotta figures. The neighboring Bantus were also skilled ironworkers, gradually spreading their language and technology east and south to everywhere except the far southern tip of Africa. In many places, however, Africans remained in the Stone Age, hunting and gathering their food from the forest and plains around them. Tangier, Caesarea, Fez, Atlas Mountains. Rock art. Farmers painted pictures on rocks in the once fertile Sahara as long ago as 6000 BC. Date palms. Camels being traded across the Sahara. Timbuktu, Gao, Guinea-Geno, Niger, Borno, Benin, Nok, Igbo Uku, If, Akan. Mining gold. Gold was mined in the forest of West Africa and made into official regalia and jewelry. Atlantic Ocean. Knot culture. From around 500 BC, Knot craft workers produced beautiful terracotta heads and figures, among the earliest surviving artwork from Africa and south of the Sahara. They also learned to smelt iron ore to produce weapons and tools, a valuable skill when most of their enemies had only wooden spears and stones to use against them. Farther up the Niger River Valley was the city of Guinea-Geno, the earliest known town in sub-Saharan Africa, which became the hub of trade across the Sahara and where traders used camels to carry gold, silver, ivory, and salt across the desert. Carthage, Lectus Magna, Egypt, Sahara. Royal tombs. The kings of Nubia and Meroe were buried in pyramids. Egyptian pyramid. Alexandria, Memphis, Nile, Nubia. Trade route. Egyptian and Roman merchants sailed across the Red Sea with items to trade. Napata, Meroe, Blue Nile, White Nile, Central African rainforest. Kenem, Lake Chad, Bantu village, Congo, making bronze. River food. The Congo and other large inland rivers provided plenty of fish for the people who lived along their banks. Great Rift Valley. Lake Tanganyika. Maasai cattle herders. Lake Victoria. Great Rift Valley. Ethiopian highlands. Royal palace. The Christian kings of Aksum ruled from a giant and magnificent royal palace. Aksum. Stone pillars. Some monumental stone pillars were built to honor Aksum's rulers. Punt. Egyptians and Romans traded with East Africa for gold, silver, ivory, spices, and other precious items. Mogadishu. Indian Ocean trade. Arab trading route dhows or boats traded African produce such as ivory and gold with India and China. Malindi. Mombasa. Zanzibar. Kilwa. Madagascar. Sofala. Zambezi. Lake Nyasa.
Ironwork. The Bantus were skilled ironworkers, smelting iron in tall charcoal burning furnaces to produce high-grade ore that was used for weapons and tools. Kalahari Desert. Hunter-gatherers. Sand bushmen hunted wild animals with spears and gathered fruits, nuts, and other wild plants. Khoisan farmer herding sheep.
1000 BC, AD 600. 1000 BC. 1000. Egyptian civilization is already 2,000 years old. 1000. Bantu-speaking people start spreading out from southern Nigeria. 900 BC. 900. Nubian kingdom of Kush flourishes. 800 BC. 712 to 671. Nubian kings rule Egypt. 700 BC. 700. Ironwork begins in Central Sahara. 600 BC. 500 BC. 500. Ironwork begins in the Nok region of Nigeria. 400 BC. 400. Ironwork spreads to East Africa. 300 BC. 200 BC. 200. Berber kingdoms of Numidia and Mauritania emerge. 146. The Romans destroy Carthage. They now dominate North Africa. 100 BC. 100. Camels are introduced into Sahara from Arabia. 30. Egypt becomes part of the Roman Empire. 0. AD 1 to 100. Madagascar is settled by people from Southeast Asia. AD 100. 100. Kingdom of Aksum flourishes. AD 200. AD 300. AD 400. 400. Genet dominates trans-Saharan trade. AD 500. 500. The Bantus occupy most of southern Africa. 522 to 574. Aksum rules Yemen and southern Arabia. 540. Nubia becomes Christian. AD 600.